everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our podcast.
In today's podcast, we're covering the next movie in the original Batman trilogy, The Dark Knight.
Woohoo!
Probably the most memorable one, too.
Yes. Now, set a year after the first film, Batman must rise again to battle the mysterious villain called the Joker, as he plans to plunge Gotham into chaos.
Hilarious chaos!
Which he did successfully.
Yep. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get updates on future podcasts and multiple pause videos.
Absolutely. And I was very happy when this movie came out. I remember loving it when I saw it. And the thing that stands out most about this movie is how it was a totally different feel from the first one.
Right.
Which was fantastic because sometimes you get sequels and then they make these multiple movies and they all have the same feel, but the story goes nowhere. But in this one, not only did it have a different feel, and they upped the ante on the action and some violence, and telling a story that showed the dichotomy between Bruce Wayne and the Joker in a brilliant way.
Right. And we know how it's supposed to play out in the comics and the animated series, on them pretty much relying on each other when it comes to psychologically. But in here, it's still there, but as you said, it's more extreme. It's more extreme in the way because Joker is still Joker. No matter who plays him, Joker is still insane. And in here, he leaned towards more insane than comedic. He did have some funny lines, though, in here. As reminiscent of, like, Mark Hamill or Jack Nicholson or Caesar Romero. There were some lines in here that were really funny. But they made sure to make it clear in here that Joker was still no joke. He was still dangerous, and he was even more dangerous because this was a action movie. And with this, you get a lot of scenes that are actually becoming memorable. Joker really was the most memorable part of the movie. Because even when this movie came out, people were always talking about it. It was a huge hit in the theaters, huge hit with critics and fans and stuff. And even now you can go back and you see there's always references to these movies. There's always the "we live in a society" quote that the Joker says, and how people are and how they act. And it's also the scene where he blows up a hospital and he's walking away in a nurse's gown. And it's always referenced. They always reference that one scene in the movie. And then the only part they leave out is that he turns around and he's like, something's wrong, and he presses a button on the remote multiple times, then more explosions go off. He's like, okay, there we go. And then he leaves.
What really was, I guess I would say, pivotal for this is we had seen this type of Joker in many comics. And it even touched on a little bit in some of the animated movies, but never on screen.
Right.
Did you see this type of Joker? And it was, at the time this came out, it was jarring to people.
Right, it never
was
been
like,
this.
I can't believe they really did this.
Yeah.
I can't believe they really put this on screen.
It was like pushing the envelope.
And exactly, and Heath Ledger did it so well that I remember reading he had to actually seek counseling, and unfortunately he was taking medication that contributed to his death, from what we've read.
Right.
But it took such a psychological toll on him, immersing himself in this version of Joker. And as we mentioned previously, this one was the one that stood out as the Joker performance that stayed on everyone's mind until Joaquin Phoenix did the Joker movie. There was a standalone movie. But before him, it was this Heath Ledger performance. And it was like nothing you'd ever seen or ever saw again up until Joaquin Phoenix's performance.
Right. And it made such an impact that when the movie was released, you see at the end it was dedicated to both him and one of the, I believe, the producer, directors of the movie who had passed before the film was put into theater, so they put a dedication at the end, where it shows that how much they both meant to the crew and to this movie. Because as you said, there was nothing like this on the screen at the time. This is before it became commonplace to just have violence and stuff like Deadpool on screen. This was really the first of its kind to be this explicit, but still have its own limits.
But still told a story.
Yeah, it wasn't just mindless violence and things happening. There was a ton of action, but it made sure it was to keep your attention, it was to tell a story, and it was just necessary for what was going on. It wasn't just going off on the screen.
Right. We had the return, of course, of Batman, of Alfred, of Commissioner Gordon, and those pivotal characters, and Lucius Fox.
Right.
You also had the addition of Two-Face, Harry Dent.
Harvey Dent.
Harvey Dent, sorry.
Yes. And of course, Rachel came back as well. But for Harvey was a big impact because, again, another quote from this movie is always said in here when he said, well, what either happens to you is you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And people have really taken that quote to heart when it comes to making movies. And a lot of times you see if a hero stays long enough or they do enough crap to it, they end up turning into the antagonist, which is pretty interesting how much that one quote he said made an impact on these people when it came to filmmaking. And I guess it was irony because he himself ended up becoming a villain.
Right.
And they even tried to keep accurate to what happened like in the animated series where you saw he was pretty calm and sophisticated. He had a few issues, but it wasn't severe yet. And it was taking more and more trauma and stress to bring out the Two-Face part. Well, in here, what brought it out was him being furious at Batman because Joker had put he and Rachel in two separate places. Only time to save one. He chose to save Harvey. But what happened, Rachel was gone, and Harvey ended up becoming disfigured, and half his face ended up being the iconic Two-Face. And he was furious at Batman that he didn't save Rachel first, and he became this, of course, this obsessive, revenge-seeking maniac because of that thing. It's his fault that he had to make a choice.
Right. And as you mentioned, Rachel returned, but played by a different actress, Maggie Gyllenhaal. And you were surprised at the outcome of Rachel's character. You didn't expect it. You just knew that wasn't going to happen. Well, guess what? It did.
Yes.
And it did help to push, in this instance, the plot along. It wasn't just something that was thrown in because we wanted to have a shock value and we just wanted to take someone else. It, as you said, advanced the story with Harvey Dent and how it pushed him over the edge.
Yeah.
The casting, again, was spot on, spectacular. Everyone did a fantastic job, an amazing job in portraying the characters. And we got to see some growth in Batman himself. Remember him from Batman Begins, but in here you can see a more mature Bruce over a short period of time taking his role in society as being a symbol and a superhero very seriously, to the point where he puts himself in harm's way at the end of the movie and decides to take the fall so that another symbol would stay that positive symbol and not be torn down and have everyone become jaded and feel that, you couldn't trust in anyone.
Right.
Which was a really big step again for a movie because no movie had done this up to that date. No one had ever done this in a movie.
Right. And when we watched it, it almost reminded us of MHA. With All Might is the symbol of peace, and no matter what, they couldn't know that he was fading in strength. It was sort of like, that's what, this movie inspired that. It just had a Superman type instead of a Batman type. But this is where that started of keeping the symbol of hope or peace or something for people to look up to, even if the viewer knows the truth about that symbol.
Absolutely. And again, it was done fantastically. The cast was, you could tell they all worked well together. It was brilliant. And you had two different villains from the first movie. And unlike a lot of the superhero movies where you see that villain keeps coming along and coming back, well, they made sure that didn't happen in this part.
Right.
And this was another first. You had a different villain or set of villains for each segment of the trilogy.
Two villains per movie. The first one you had Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul. This movie had the Joker and Two-Face.
And then you have two more in the next movie installment. So this again is we've said this was a testament to how superhero movies should be made, even when they have a darker presence. This is the best. This is one of the greatest ways of doing it. And I did love that. Again, they were showing in this movie how the characters had values and morals, and there's a line that they wouldn't cross, the heroes, I should say, because Lucius told Bruce, I don't like this spying. Well, he wouldn't like now with all the spying that goes on in our current world, but he didn't like how he had set up all these cameras all over Gotham where he could see everything, and he says, after this, I quit. I'm done. Consider this my resignation. And you were thinking, oh man, Batman, oh my gosh, he just did something really awful. Lucius is going to quit. What's he going to do? Has Batman crossed the line? And then when you see the scene where he says, I put in the password to the only man I knew I could trust with this, and it was Lucius's own name.
Right.
And then the whole thing collapsed, and he smiled, and he was like, okay, Bruce is still Bruce.
Right.
And that was a great scene because it said a lot without words being spoken. You know, when he put that password in and they all just started self-destructing, it was like, okay, he's still that symbol that is honorable and moral. And again, at the end, you see how much he believed in it, where he put himself to be the fall guy.
Right.
This is a fantastic movie. If you've seen The Dark Knight, let us know what you think in the comments below. Did you think it was a fantastic sequel to Batman Begins? Or are you looking forward to the third part of the trilogy? Do you wish that Christian Bale had come back for another trilogy in this series? Let us know what you think in the comments below.
And be sure to like, subscribe, and notification bell to get updates on future podcasts and World of Paws videos.
And the final segment of this trilogy.
Yes. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Masculine Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.